Jai Guru Murti Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharini Nivashesa Sunivari Paschatya Deshatarine. Turn it on? Okay. It's on. Yes. At this time when Prabhupada was ill, when he came back from London and then he came from Bombay to Vrindavan, it so happened that Yadubara was in India doing a project. Vishaka was with Jamuna working on the big cookbook that she was making, so she wasn't here. Yadubara was free to come here to Vrindavan, and the devotees were objecting that he shouldn't video Prabhupada while he was sick, but Prabhupada said no, he could do whatever he wants to do. So Yadubara made this final lesson video of the last visit when Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. I wanted to show it today so that we can understand what Prabhupada's activities were, and then we can, after watching the final lesson, then we can fill in the details of the things that happened during that time.
His Divine Grace, H.G.Daivisakti Prabhupada, was a pure devotee of Lord Krishna, and therefore his entire life, including his passing from this mortal world, was a perfect example of Krishna consciousness. This video depicts his final pastimes. During his last months in Vrindavan, His Divine Grace continued to instruct his disciples, discuss the affairs of ISKCON, and translate Srimad Bhagavatam. On his request, his disciples maintained 24-hour kirtan and readings from the scriptures. Srila Prabhupada invited all his disciples to be with him as he passed the test we all must face. However, due to circumstances often beyond their control, most of his disciples were not present. Now, those who choose to can experience those precious moments. Although these scenes can be emotionally wrenching, they do depict a rare transcendental event, the last chapter in Srila Prabhupada's glorious life. The final lesson.
Out of many thousand men, one may endeavor for perfection, and among many millions who have achieved perfection, one may be a devotee of Lord Krishna. Such a devotee who is fully peaceful is extremely rare.
Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee is not identified with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee having a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It's example like the waters of the Ganges, which remain pure, although filled with bubbles, foam, and mud during the rainy season. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water.
we cannot visually experience the presence of the Supersoul, out of his immense compassion, the Supersoul appears before us as a pure devotee, the spiritual master. Such a spiritual master is as worshipable as Krishna is, for in his dealings there are no activities but those of transcendental loving service to the Lord.
Scriptures is that by even a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success. That moment is human society's greatest treasure.
Seeing the spiritual master with devotion and reverence is the perfection of one's eyesight. Touching the Lord's feet is the perfection of the sense of touch. And glorifying his qualities is the tongue's real activity.
by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Being awake to his constitutional position, the pure devotee is situated in samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of yoga. Being fully absorbed in devotional service, he does not care what is going on with the external body. Such a confidential devotee of the Lord sees in every moment, even a most difficult moment, the special mercy of the Lord.
Hong Kong. on result. This is Govinda Kund.
This week is with Sukhidipana. This week is with Sukhidipana. This week is with Sukhidipana. What do you use in Samadhi?
No one.
Big one.
No.
No.
Srila Prabhupada is the crown jewel on the head of this world. Without it, this world is bereft of its valuable ornament. Yet, in Srila Prabhupada's absence, there is no need to become despondent, because there is no difference between Srila Prabhupada's instructions and Srila Prabhupada himself, who is personally present in his instructions. In his absence, therefore, Srila Prabhupada's words of direction are the pride of his followers. Their implicit faith in his words is their success.
O virtuous devotees, thus we have seen the departure of Srila Prabhupada, and us to increase our desire for him, because the more we hunger for him, the more we will be freed from all material desires.
This is the prasad distribution at the side of the Gurukula. This is the last chapter that Srila Prabhupada translated in full. This is the last chapter that Srila Prabhupada translated in full. 10th canto, chapter 13, when the Brahma Vimohan Lila. And he started the 14th chapter. There are some slokas that Prabhupada had translated and commented upon. But this particular chapter, the BBT had already printed 10th canto part 1, that was from 1 to 12. And then they printed a special edition, part 2, but that part 2 only had the 13th chapter, and that book is on Prabhupada's bed. Just a limited edition of that one volume, that one chapter on special paper. And that they were able to bring to Prabhupada before he left this world, that volume 2. Now, while Prabhupada was sick, we had heard that he was taking medicine from Banamali Kaviraj from Gopinath Bazar, and other Kavirajas were called, and Prabhupada had a dream of a Ramanuja Kaviraj from the Sri Sampradaya. He was wearing the Ramanuja tilak, and he was making a very special medicine made out of mercury called Makaradwaj. And he was in Calcutta. This is Prabhupada's dream. So the devotees contacted H.G.Daivisakti, who was the temple president in Calcutta, and he searched everywhere for that Kaviraj that Prabhupada had dreamed of. And finally, he went to one Kaviraj, very high-class family, Shastri family. The name of the Kaviraj is Damodar Prasad Shastri. And H.G.Daivisakti asked him, do you have Makaradwaj? And the man was shocked. He said, how did you know? I had just made it. It was very complicated medicine because there are 3 different types of Ayurvedic medicines. Ayurvedic medicines in the mode of goodness are made with herbs. Ayurvedic medicines in the mode of passion are made with metals. And Ayurvedic medicine in the lower mode is made with poisons, such as mercury. And these are treated when a disease is very severe. Just like if you have a fire, you can put that fire out with another fire. Fire extinguishes fire. So in very advanced illnesses, these medicines that contain poison can reverse the illness. So Damodar Prasad Shastri, he was implored by the devotees to please come and treat Prabhupada. So he came here to Vrindavan, and he was making the medicines himself. There was one medicine he was treating Prabhupada with that was having success. The name of that medicine, just like today we heard about the Leela of when Shukracharya, the son of Brihaspati, came to learn to make the Mritu Sanjivani. So the name of this medicine was Brikka Sanjivani Arak, and it had 22 herbs in it. And Damodar Prasad Shastri, he would wander around in the forests here in Vrindavan to get all of the herbs that he needed. And there was one herb that he couldn't find, Ikshugandha Mool. Then by the mercy of Sri Krishna, he found it and he was able to make the medicine. And then he had Adri Dharan pound the medicine in a mortar and pestle. 9 hours he had to pound it. And then it had to be sifted through a double doti into a very fine powder. And then after that, it had to be boiled in water, distilled in water, and then Prabhupada was given that water to drink. And it was having a good effect on Prabhupada, to the point where they felt that Prabhupada wanted to try the Makara Dwaja. So the doctor administered it to him. And if this medicine is not working, what happens is your skin starts to turn blue. So Prabhupada was checking his skin to see if it was turning blue, and the medicine wasn't working. So at this time Prabhupada was saying that it's acting like poison on me, because the medicine wasn't having the opposite effect that it was supposed to have. He was too weak. He was too far beyond. Because even the Shastriji, he said that this is not a material disease. Nothing's going to cure him. Only if Prabhupada wants to be cured, then it can be cured. Because sometimes his pulse would go up to 115 and would be irregular. And then after a short time, his pulse would be completely normal. So the doctor was treating him. He understood the elevated position of Srila Prabhupada as a pure devotee. So he gave up all of his patients in Calcutta, 7 of them who were dying, and came here just to treat Prabhupada. And he saw the love of his disciples, so he wanted to treat Prabhupada. So during when he came back, we saw there in October, Prabhupada, he was feeling well enough to start translating again. And then this went on until the beginning of November. Then in November, on November 1st, Srila Prabhupada was one of the members of the steering committee of the Gita Pratishthan Society. It was led by one Mr. Bajaj, the head of the Bajaj group, Ram Krishna Bajaj, and by Sri Narayan, who was the former chief minister of Gujarat. Very high-class people, and 100 of the members came and rented our guest house to have their conference here. It was a very good big conference where everyone was speaking about the Bhagavad Gita. Unfortunately, some of the members of this conference were Mayavadis. So the devotees came to Prabhupada a little concerned that they were going to speak Mayavadi philosophy coming from Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada said that we should put a sign up that at the front of the temple, Mayavadis may not visit. And what it came to was, there was a sign that Mayavadis were not allowed to speak at the conference. But they did allow Akshayananda Swami to speak in Hindi, because by that time he had learned how to lecture in Hindi. And he impressed upon the members that just see what one Indian was able to accomplish by preaching Bhagavad Gita purely all over the world. Thousands and thousands of devotees were made. And if all of you do as Srila Prabhupada did and preach the Bhagavad Gita purely, then millions, the whole world can become Krishna conscious. And he specifically quoted 2 slokas from the Bhagavad Gita, which are very convincing. One is 1855, Bhaktyamam abhijanati, yavanyas chasmi tattvataha, tato mam tattvato gyatva, vishate tad anantaram. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. And he quoted 1154, My dear Arjun, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So preaching on the platform of Bhakti Yoga, he requested the members of the conference to take up the preaching of Bhagavad Gita in the same spirit that Srila Prabhupada did. And then he quoted Harinam, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Gatir Anyatha. And in that way the conference members were very much impressed that Srila Prabhupada, even in the condition that he was in, had made so many devotees all around the world, even to the point where they were preaching to these high-class Shastris, Swamis, and other political leaders, and convincing them to take up the preaching of Bhagavad Gita along the lines as Srila Prabhupada did. And then the next day, on November 2nd, Sri Narayan and Ramakrishna Bajaj, they asked to come and speak to Srila Prabhupada privately. They didn't want any of his disciples to be in the room. What they didn't know is that Bhakti Charu Swami had pressed the button on the tape recorder so that everything was being taped, recorded that they were saying. And what they wanted to know from Srila Prabhupada was, who is going to take over this big society when you go? And Prabhupada said, anyone who follows, they can become leaders. Prabhupada did not appoint any leaders. He said, a good disciple makes a good master. So any of my disciples, all of my disciples, and there'll be many, many after me. So, in other words, Prabhupada could understand that actually they wanted to take over the society. So after they left, when the disciples came back into the room, Prabhupada warned them that you have to be very, very careful. You have to continue to follow very strictly everything that I have taught you, because there will be people like this who will come and try to grab the power of the movement and take over from within the entire society. So Prabhupada gave that warning to the devotees at that time. Here we have beautiful Krishnabalaram. Sometimes Balaram at that time had a club, and the club, it was as if he was able to defeat all the Mayavadis and all the demons with that club. Now this is when Prabhupada was doing his translating. He had trained Pradyumna because you can see here in Prabhupada's room, Prabhupada had the Bengali script of the Srimad Bhagavatam with 6 different tikas from the previous acharyas, including his own spiritual master. And he would use that as his textbook for creating his own Bhaktivedanta purports. After reading the tikas of each sloka, then he would speak his own purport into the dictaphone every night. So at this point, because Prabhupada was incapacitated, he would have Pradyumna sit, as we saw in the movie, sit and read the tikas in Sanskrit, because he could read the Bengali. Even the 6 Goswamis, when they wrote their books in Sanskrit, they still used Bengali script. It was Sanskrit in Bengali, just as Krishnadas Kaviraj, when he wrote the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it was all written in Bengali script, but many of the slokas are Sanskrit. So Pradyumna would read each of the tikas, you can hear in that movie, and then Prabhupada would give his English purport. Then Prabhupada daily, on his palanquin that we have in his room here, would go on the parikrama of the temple while the deities were, the darshan was being taken, and then Prabhupada would do the parikrama with ecstatic kirtan. And not only 4 times, many times sometimes he would go, because he felt that even if he died while he was doing parikrama, that would be glorious. Now soon after that, Lokanath Swami, who Prabhupada had sent out on the bullock cart preaching, the Padayatra, Lokanath Swami came back on November 10th to report to Prabhupada. They had just done a full Padayatra of UP, and at that time UP included all the holy places up in the, where now is Uttaranchal and Uttarakhand. So Prabhupada asked, where did they go? And Lokanath Swami said, well, we went to Badrinath, and in Badrinath we made a whole display of your Srimad Bhagavatam to show to Srila Vyasadeva, who lives there. And Prabhupada was very pleased about that. Then they went to a place called Bhim Kapur. After the Pandavas retired and they were walking north, first Subhadra, then Draupadi, then Nakula and Sahadev, then even Arjun, they dropped because they were going up north into the Himalayas. Only Bhima and Yudhisthira were left. Finally, Bhima, he also dropped. So at that place, Bhima Kapur, this is where Bhima left the world. So they also had the Padayatra go that far up into the Himalayas. So Prabhupada then called Jaipataka and Bhavananda, and probably the other devotees are also there, like Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And Prabhupada was so enthused to hear about Lokanath Swami's Padayatra preaching, he told the devotees at that time that practically I'm dead, I'm just living, my life air is in my bones, there's nothing left of my body anymore. I want to go on Padayatra, on Parikrama, with Lokanath Swami's bullock cart group. And every day we'll go in the sunshine traveling, we'll take a little milk, drink a little milk, and then at night under a tree we'll take rest. And I want all of you to stay in your places and manage the society. This is called civil suicide. It means when a person gives up all of his responsibilities and consciously leaves it's a form of suicide because they leave knowing that they're going to give up their body, just as the Pandavas had done. They know they're going to give up their body when they leave. So Prabhupada, everyone wanted to go with Prabhupada on this Padayatra, but Prabhupada said, no, you all have to stay in your places and manage. Lokanath, he knows how to do all of this because he's experienced in this traveling. So I just want him to take me to the holy places. So then Lokanath told Prabhupada that Prabhupada, in 2 days is Govardhan Parikrama. It's Govardhan Puja. So we can make our first trip going around Govardhan. And Prabhupada was very excited. He said this is one of his last desires that he had. He said, yes, I want to go on Govardhan Parikrama. We can all go together. You call Krishnadas Babaji. I want him to come with me also. So Lokanath was telling Prabhupada that I've seen in Pune, they have beautiful bullock carts that are as beautiful as chariots. And we can get one like that for you, Prabhupada. And in the meantime, I'll rent a bullock cart for you from Mathura. And we can start right away, we'll get everything ready. So Prabhupada was very excited to do this. But then, of course, the devotees were so frightened because they knew that Prabhupada's body was so frail. Within a few hours, they thought that he was going to leave his body with the jerking and the jolting of the bullock cart. So they were frightened. They didn't want Prabhupada to go. They called the Kaviraj. And the Kaviraj got so upset when he heard that Prabhupada was planning to go on this Padayatra. He said, if you go on this bullock cart, I will immediately leave for Calcutta. I've left 7 patients who are on their deathbeds to come treat you because I respect you so much. But if you disobey my request that you not go on the bullock carts, then I'm immediately leaving and I can't treat you anymore. So that was the first expression of Prabhupada, please don't go. And then, but there were this polarized into 2 groups. One group had Hansaduta Swami and other devotees saying, well, this is the desire of the spiritual master, and we as his disciples, it's our responsibility to see that his desire is fulfilled. That was their mentality. And the other party, Tamal Krishna, Bhavananda, Bhakti Charu, Upendra, the ones who were taking care of him, they were crying and losing their mind. They were going mad how to keep Prabhupada from committing this civil suicide, because they knew he would never be able to survive going on a bullock cart ride like that. So finally, Prabhupada said, well, we'll let you call my godbrothers and let them decide. So who came was, the next day, Krishnadas Babaji came, Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji, and Ban Maharaj, and Narayan Maharaj. Narayan Maharaj was the disciple of Keshav Maharaj, who was Prabhupada's sannyas, who had given Prabhupada sannyas in Mathura. So the 3 of them came, and at that time, Prabhupada, he apologized to them. He said, they call me the pickaxe preacher. In one hand I had a pickaxe, and in the other hand I had the Srimad Bhagavatam. And sometimes I would use very harsh words to preach against the atheists and to establish this Krishna consciousness all over the world. So I beg your forgiveness, because I am Mahapatita, Prabhupada said. If I offended you in any way, please forgive me. Prabhupada was so humble. And then Krishnadas Babaji said, no, you are Mahapatita Pavan. There's no offense. You committed no offense. you're glorious all over the world. You've made over 100 temples, you've printed over 80 books, you've made thousands of disciples. How can there be any fault in any preaching that you've done? So in that way they were consoling Prabhupada, because Prabhupada sometimes, in order to protect his disciples, he very strongly tell us not to mix with his godbrothers, because if they changed even one word, then everything would be destroyed. So we had that instruction, and we knew we weren't supposed to mix with his godbrothers. There were two godbrothers, that was Krishnadas Babaji and Puri Maharaj, who were very favorable and very, very helpful to Srila Prabhupada in his preaching work. So they were safe to, not that we should associate with them, but we knew that they were friendly to Prabhupada and they appreciated Prabhupada. The others, they would sometimes even work against Srila Prabhupada. So we had to be very careful to follow Prabhupada's instructions. So the next day came, and finally Tamal Krishna and Bhavananda just went in crying to Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, we just can't let you do this, because we know your body will never be able to take this hard labor of going on the bullock carts. And besides that, the Kaviraj, who has been helping you so much, he's going to go back to Calcutta then. So when Prabhupada saw how absolutely distressed they were, he said, especially this was in reference to Bhavananda, because the shooting incident had just recently happened in Mayapur. What had happened was, it was a political move. They came and attacked the devotees, and there was shooting back and forth. The devotees were shot, the devotees were beaten, and when the police finally came, rather than arresting the dacoits who attacked the temple, the police arrested the devotees and put them all in jail. And Prabhupada understood that actually they were looking for him, and they wanted to put Prabhupada in jail, because they knew that if Prabhupada was put in jail, he would die within a few days. So in the newspapers, it even said that the founder Acharya was not present at the time. So Bhavananda was put in jail. That was the time when Bhakti Raghav Swami, because he was in jail, and they had injured his leg so badly and weren't giving him any medical treatment that ultimately his leg had to be amputated. Many of the devotees had serious injuries, but they were all in jail. So finally, when they got out of jail, Bhavananda came, and he was one of the personal assistants to Srila Prabhupada at this time. And some of the other devotees came. Shadadanya also came with him at that time. He was the nurse of Prabhupada. So Prabhupada said, you have suffered so much. How can I make you suffer more? Because I know that this will, Prabhupada understood this would make them so unhappy if he went on this parikrama. So he said, all right, I won't go. So then he said, you ask Krishnadas Babaji to go on my behalf, and he can bathe in Radhakund for me. So what they did was they changed the plan, because they wanted to make first they wanted to experiment that day, the day before, going on parikrama around Vrindavan, the Vrindavan parikrama. Lokanath Swami had brought the bullock cart, and even instead of doing that, what they did was they put all the Gurukul boys on the bullock cart, and they took them into town to the temples and through Loy Bazaar, and there was another cart behind, and they were announcing, everyone please come for arti, for prasad distribution at the temple in the afternoon. So all they did was went into town with this bullock cart procession. So that was already November 12th. And then after that, from November 12th to November 14th, the heirs in Prabhupada, because there was nothing left of Prabhupada's body except for bones. And the heirs in his body were starting to move and causing his limbs to move. And he was expressing that he was moaning, and everyone was very afraid that very soon Prabhupada would be leaving. And the Kaviraj also confirmed that. And the Kaviraj offered, at that time, he said, the best I can do is, I can prolong his life for a few hours by giving him a catheter. Everyone knows what a catheter is to take the liquids out. So, because the kidneys were failing, take the liquids out. But then, the devotees, they knew, again and again Prabhupada said, that I don't want to die with tubes in me, because one of his godbrothers, he went to the hospital and they diagnosed him, but they mixed up the diagnostic papers with somebody else's. They said that he had tuberculosis when he didn't, and he died with all types of tubes all over his body. And he wanted nothing to do with hospitals, with doctors, with tubes, with oxygen, nothing. He wanted to just die naturally. So the devotees decided, no catheter. If you extend for a few hours, what is the difference? So, as you saw in the movie, all the devotees, because generally no one would be allowed in Prabhupada's house except for the servants, but they opened up the doors to Prabhupada's house. They announced to everyone, come in for kirtan. Whatever devotees were here at the time, they all came in for kirtan. And instead of just having one person lead, everyone at the same time, they were all chanting Hare Krishna Kirtan very loudly. What Pishima did was she took a picture of Lord Nrsingadev and a picture of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami and put it at Prabhupada's head. And she also sprinkled Ganga water. She always carried a little container of Ganga water. Wherever she went, she would sprinkle it to pure. If she sat down anywhere, she would sprinkle that water, anything. So she always had Ganga Dal. She sprinkled it at Prabhupada, on Prabhupada, and then set at his lotus feet while he was disappearing. So you can see Bhakti Charu Swami, the whole time he was there, trying to give Prabhupada Charanamrita, but Prabhupada wasn't responding. So finally, just at the beginning of the Amrit Yog time, at about 7:25 in the evening, on November 14th, Srila Prabhupada, he said Hare Krishna and left his body. And then a few days when Narayan Maharaj, Ban Maharaj and Krishnadas Kaviraj came, because the devotees had never put a sannyasi into samadhi before. There are particular procedures for doing that. And he called Narayan Maharaj to please instruct the devotees how to perform the samadhi ceremony. That got expanded into something else, but what he requested was that he show the devotees how to put Prabhupada into samadhi. A few days before that, Prabhupada had ordered the salt, so he knew he was going. And he also decided where his samadhi was going to be. Now, when Prabhupada said it should be at the front of the temple, Jayapataka Swami objected that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said that to have a samadhi at the front of a temple is not auspicious. But Prabhupada, now, we didn't understand why Prabhupada wanted his samadhi there till many, many years later. But Prabhupada said, no, there's a lot of land there, so put my samadhi there. So we had heard at the first or second day how Kashi Prasad Saraf, he made a court case against the temple because we made our front entrance there, and he and his wife had signed over the front of the land to Prabhupada. So that court case was still going on. So Prabhupada wanted samadhi there, because once you put some samadhi, then you can't move a samadhi. So that way the land was secure, now that Prabhupada's samadhi was going to be built there. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj had everyone leave the room. They bathed Srila Prabhupada. They dressed him. They had to tie his mouth with a piece of cloth. And you saw when Prabhupada entered into the samadhi pit, his body was completely soft, completely soft. Then they put Prabhupada on his palanquin and brought him into the temple, where everyone had kirtan and circumambulated him. And then they took off the poles of the palanquin, and the palanquin fit exactly perfectly onto Prabhupada's Vyasasana. And the whole night they chanted kirtan to Srila Prabhupada. And the next morning they took Prabhupada on Antim Yatra. This is what's done for the pure devotees. It's so that the deities in the temple can have Antim Darshan of the pure devotee. So whenever at each temple they went to, the pujaris came out, offered Charanamrita to Prabhupada, offered Maha cloth and a garland. And also many people along the way were stopping. You saw there the Mukutwala, he also offered cloth and garland Prabhupada. And in that way everyone in Vrindavan town had the opportunity to have Antim Darshan and to honor Srila Prabhupada before he was going to be placed into Samadhi. We have many of those things that were given to Prabhupada on display here that were kept. And also we have some of the dust, we have some of the salt, we have some of the flowers. Those flowers that were offered to Prabhupada, after they placed Prabhupada on the marble slab at the bottom of the Samadhi pit, while the devotees were going on the Antim Yatra, they were digging the Samadhi pit, and a Yojapati was cooking the feast. And we have in our book Memories of Vrindavan his memoirs of that day, how he cooked the feast while all the devotees went, and he made sure that some devotees stayed back to help him. So after Prabhupada was placed on the marble slab, they performed arti to him, and then they marked his body with different mantras and tilak, and worshipped the body, because the body of the pure devotee is already spiritual. And then they began covering his body with salt, and when the salt was completely covering the whole body, then they put a bamboo pole at the place where Prabhupada's head was, and they kept that pole there, and then everyone started throwing in dirt to fill up the Samadhi pit. And where that pole is exactly where the large bronze murti is in the Samadhi now. That murti was made in America by the disciples and brought here in 1983, and then the installation of that murti was done 1984, Prabhupada's disappearance day. So it took until 1984 for Srila Prabhupada's murti to be installed and for the Samadhi to be completed. So it was 1977 to 1984. How many years is that? 7 years, yes. And even then the construction wasn't complete, but the inside was complete enough that they then installed the murti of Prabhupada. So from that day onwards, Yojapati Das was the pujari of Srila Prabhupada in his Samadhi. He would perform the artis, and we were considering at that time, do we do the worship according to Prabhupada's daily schedule as he lived, or do we do the worship according to the deity's schedule? So it was decided then that Prabhupada's Samadhi would be under the same department as the deities department. He would receive all of the same offerings, and now that he was Nitya Lila Pravishta, there was no reason to cook for Prabhupada because of any health restrictions that he had. So all of the offerings that at that time, Prabhupada, the year before, he had reduced the plates to 6. So then now they had 7 plates to make. And then every day we would walk down to Prabhupada's rooms at Radha Damodar and cook for Prabhupada there. It was very austere there in Prabhupada's rooms. No electricity and no water. There was only one well there. And only we had gobar and wood to cook with. But still every day we would walk down, make the offering to Prabhupada, and one brahmachari would stay there in the rooms at that time. So that was going on. Prabhupada was now taking prasadam in the temple, in his samadhi, and at the Radha Damodar temple. Prabhupada very much wanted that his rooms be preserved and the worship go on in the Radha Damodar temple. So you'll see here in Prabhupada's house, the artists in America, they were making these resin murtis of Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, this is after Prabhupada disappeared, Prabhupada approved that deities could be made out of resin because resin originally comes from the earth. So the first murti that they made, that they sent here, was Prabhupada writing. And that murti was the first murti that we worshipped here in Prabhupada's house. It looked exactly like Srila Prabhupada. We had that murti here at his desk. But then they sent the second murti, which was a little bigger, didn't exactly look like Prabhupada, and that was a dictating murti. The murti that's there now at Prabhupada's desk, actually he's not chanting japa. We used to have his dictaphone there and put his dictaphone microphone into his hand, and he would, that's a dictating murti. So we had 2 murtis then of Prabhupada here. So because out of feeling of great separation from Srila Prabhupada after he left, at first Prabhupada's house, because so many lila went on here with Prabhupada and his disciples, we had Prabhupada's house up until 1979, for the next 2 years, only open to his disciples to come and have a personal darshan and private time with Srila Prabhupada in his rooms. We would worship Prabhupada in his rooms and offer him. Here in his house, we were doing everything according to the way Prabhupada lived. We would set up his massage mats, we would set up his bath, we would cook his offerings, everything. You could feel Prabhupada's presence here. When Satsvarup Maharaj came here, he was writing the Prabhupada Lilamrita at that time. He said that he came into Prabhupada's house and he said that this is just like a living temple. You could feel Prabhupada's presence here at that time because everything was going on exactly when Prabhupada lived here. It was a very beautiful and uplifting atmosphere for all the disciples who came to visit Prabhupada at that time. Then we had a change of GBC. Bhavananda came here to be our GBC. He was GBC in both places, Mayapur and Vrindavan. And when Srila Prabhupada left and entered Samadhi, all of Srila Prabhupada's valuables were, first of all, some were given as gifts to the devotees who had done a lot of service for Prabhupada. In fact, some of the gifts that they had actually given to Prabhupada were given back to them as Mahaprasadam. For instance, Guru Kripa Swami, his things were given back to him, and then after just 2 years ago, he realized, I'm carrying all these things, I have all these things, let me just keep them here in Prabhupada's house. So gradually, the devotees, they realized that the proper place for Prabhupada's belongings is here in his house. So they're beginning to return the things that they were given at that time. I received Prabhupada's key that Prabhupada used to always wear on his Brahmin thread. And that key opened up his Elmira here. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj gave me that key. We opened up so what Tamal Krishna Maharaj did was the most valuable things, Prabhupada's gold and silver and gifts that had been given to him, his eating plate, they were split up into three divisions. 1/3 was sent to his quarters in Bombay, 1/3 was sent to his quarters in Mayapur, and 1/3 he kept here in the Elmira. But after the shooting incident, when Bhavananda became the GBC here, he decided that it wasn't safe to keep anything of value in Mayapur. So he brought all of those things of Srila Prabhupada to be kept here also. So then we had a lot of wonderful things of Prabhupada's tadiya, his own, the things that he used to use, and they're also worshipable according to Lord Shiva, that anything belonging to the pure devotee, that's also worshipable. So then Bhavananda decided that we should open up Srila Prabhupada's house here to the public and make it into a public museum of Prabhupada's home. So we took all of those valuables and we made all of these display cases that you see in Prabhupada's rooms. And then we, more murtis came of Srila Prabhupada. Now how many? We now have 4 murtis of Srila Prabhupada in the different places where he used to have his pastimes here with the devotees. One at his desk, one where he would take prasadam, one where he would take rest, and one upstairs where he would translate, sitting on his rocking chair. The most valuable things of Srila Prabhupada we do not display. We keep them locked up. We have pictures of those things. For instance, Hari Sori, when he was Prabhupada's servant, Prabhupada used to use a little hand mirror to put on his tilak. And Hari Sori, he really wanted that in Mahaprasadam. So what he did was he had made a 24-karat gold, heavy gold, of krishnabalaram in Vrindavan, and gave that to Prabhupada so that he could get Prabhupada's little hand mirror. And then Shyam Sundar at one point, he wanted to make he was a gemologist by profession. So he wanted to do mining and wanted to make a lot of money for Prabhupada from this mining. And down in Andhra Pradesh, there's ruby mines. So he was doing ruby mining, so he made beautiful ruby buttons for Prabhupada. And Palika, who's Bhavananda's former wife, she also made gold buttons for Prabhupada. And Hansaduta, he got a full silver plate with so many silver cups for Prabhupada. So there's gold and silver, but because Prabhupada said that not to use gold and silver in Vrindavan, we keep all of that locked up. And as far as possible, whenever devotees come who had pastimes with Prabhupada, we're always inviting them to come and speak their memories of Prabhupada to enliven the devotees. Already now, for instance, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was keeping a diary, TKG's diary, of everything that happened while he was Prabhupada's secretary in those last 2 years. So he then published that, and then he was studying Sanskrit drama according to Rupa Goswami and the way the Goswamis used to write their dramas. And he wrote 2 dramas. One he wrote about Lord Jagannath, and the second one he wrote about Prabhupada's Antya Lila. And it's a very beautiful, everything according to the Sanskrit. Of course, it's in English, but he followed everything according to the Sanskrit rules of drama. And if you can read that, it's in the Veda base now. If you ever get an opportunity, I read the whole thing today to prepare for this Antya Lila session, and he's done it so poetically and so beautifully. We have a little time. I thought we could act out the first act of that, if you don't mind. Because are there 11 devotees in the room here? Yeah. Okay. We need someone to be the director. Who wants to be the director? Who? You'll be the director? We need someone to be his assistant. Everyone just, okay, you'll be the assistant. We need someone to be Tamal Krishna Goswami. Just remember your parts so that when the speaking comes on. We need someone to be Bhakti Charu Swami. Dharmatma, okay. We need someone to be Upendra. Prabhupada's servant. Upendra. Okay, someone decide who they... We need someone to be Bhagatji. Yes. Who are you going to be? Oh, you're Bhakti Charu. Okay. And then we need someone to be a devotee named Vichitravirya. Yes, okay, Vichitravirya. We need someone to be Abhiram.
Yes,
Okay, you'll be Abhiram. We need someone to be Harikesh. And we need someone to be Ganesham. So be ready for your parts. We're going to open up this play now. Hope I could find it. I'm sorry, I should have had it opened. Ah, where is it? No, it's not it. Just a second. No. have to Antya Leela, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I'm sorry, I should have kept it. Maybe I did keep it. No.
What's the name of the drama?
It's called Antya Leela.
You can type in advanced code.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. Just a minute. Yes, there it is. Let's see. Books by ISKCON devotees. Okay. Now we know where to find it. It's under Books by ISKCON devotees if anyone wants to find it. Okay, we're going to Act 1, beginning. Now, if anyone has ever read Vidagdha Madhava, Lalita Madhava, it always starts with an introduction. So the introduction is spoken by the director and the assistant. Who are they?
Yes. Assistant. I'm that one.
Who's the director?
Myself.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay. Do we need to enact this or just?
I'll read the things in the parentheses. The director hurriedly enters the gateway courtyard of the Krishnabalaram temple complex in Vrindavan, searching for his assistant. He is carrying a copy of the Nectar of Devotion. Director to himself, annoyed.
These playwrights, they think they can take unlimited liberties. We are about to begin, and suddenly I am handed a new introduction.
Sarcastically.
The author is worried the audience won't be prepared for the drama's striking theme. Why don't he think of that earlier? Why didn't he think of that
Oops.
earlier?
Oops. Just a minute, I lost the whole. Here's me. Okay.
Besides, they are already prepared. Why else have they come to Vrindavan at this particular time? Anyway, I would better rehearse.
He calls his assistant, but there's no response.
When I need him the most, he disappears. Now where did I put it?
He searches his pockets, then thumbs through the book and lifts out a sheet which he unfolds.
Ah, here it is.
Mm.
Oh,
I don't know, why is my...
I lost it again.
Yeah, my...
Okay.
Okay.
I am reading out loud.
He reads out loud.
To be read dramatically with intense emotion.
He studies the lines, and then, I don't know why
Yeah, let's delivers them with feeling.
delivers them with feeling.
Release him! Release him!
Mistaking their beloved master to be in death's embrace, the devotees fell unconscious. Reviving, they implored,
Death! Has evil Kali engaged you where he himself has failed? Then the presence of the Bhagavat has made Kali hide in fear, exactly like a thief taking shelter of the night.
to himself in normal voice, appreciating,
A very effective simile. Prabhupada's preaching is as illuminating as the sun and has driven the personality of Kali into hiding. Using the cover of night, Kali tries to steal Prabhupada's life away.
he again repeats the lines, beginning from death. Has evil Kali engaged you, etc.
So, shall I say it?
It's okay, you can just
I
go.
like it. Now what else?
After studying the script further, he resumes his dramatic recitation.
Ah, fate. We thought you were justice personified, awarding men their due. Yet today, we see religion crushed in your coils. Impetuous time, God's eerie spectre, you have entered Raja with your own nefarious plan. Now leave at once. Be gone. This is the Lord's eternal abode.
To himself,
Good. Then,
after reading, he recites,
let our cry of despair reach the limits of the universe, that all may now hear this anguished prayer. Dear Krishna, if you so desire, please spare Srila Prabhupada.
to himself resuming his normal voice,
It's definitely an improvement. Prabhupada's disappearance pastimes are difficult, both for the actors and the audience, but those who make the effort will certainly develop unalloyed devotion and transcend all fear of death.
assistant,
Sir,
Where have you been?
sir, I must inform you of an impending misfortune.
Misfortune? My boy, you are residing in Vrindavan during the month of Kartik, and your name is also Kartik, and taking a daily bath in sacred Yamuna. Fortune herself holds us in her arms, especially when this auspicious new drama, Prabhupada Antalila, is about to be performed.
Sir, that's just it. I did as you asked and invited all the devotees to attend. But when I explained the theme, they became morose. One devotee shouted and chased me away. What good is this drama if its theme is so disturbing?
My boy, as a gardener knows his trees, so you must know your dramas. Each drama, like a tree, has its special quality. Some, like the mango, produce sweet fruits, while others, like the neem, are bitter.
I'm afraid this drama's subject is very bitter.
But the neem is medicinal, and its bitterness stimulates our appetite. Still, I would compare our drama to the tamal tree. Just as in Krishna's absence, the gopis could feel his presence only by embracing the beautiful black tamal tree, devotees pained by separation from Prabhupada will feel his presence once again when they hear this drama.
But sir,
Listen, the devotee's response proves that they are experiencing devotional ecstasy when hearing about Krishna's pure devotee Srila Prabhupada. Just calm yourself. Let me explain something to you. In the Nectar of Devotion,
he holds his book before his assistant to emphasize his point.
it says that ecstatic love can develop when one sees Lord Krishna, his pure devotee, or an object which reminds one of Krishna. It's called Deepan.
but when I announced that Srila Prabhupada would be the hero of our drama, they stared aghast. I had reminded them of the most painful experience, Srila Prabhupada's disappearance.
Don't be deceived by their reaction. They are actually absorbed in the ecstasy of Karuna Bhakti Rasa. Just be patient and everything will become clear to you. In this ecstasy of devotional service, there are sometimes symptoms like regret, heavy breathing, crying, falling on the ground, and beating upon one's chest. When a devotee expects some mishap to Krishna or his pure devotee, it is called devotional service in bereavement. Even though the very mention of Prabhupada's disappearance does indeed bring pain to a disciple's heart, hearing the subject is like drinking hot sugarcane juice, painful yet irresistibly sweet. Look out there! Audience is beginning to swarm like maddened bees searching for that sweet taste.
Then with your permission, sir, I shall go at once to Srila Prabhupada's residence, where I am sure the pain of separation from him will be softened by the sweet nectar of his inspiration.
Excellent.
They walked out.
As a true Paramahamsa, his divine grace ruled the planet like a second
Garuda.
Only after he made sure that Sri Krishna's message had penetrated all 7 continents did Prabhupada finally take rest in his most sacred land of Vrindavan.
Look, the lights are on, and in the left window 2 people are silhouetted against the curtain.
Let's move closer. We might make out who they are.
They move closer to listen. From off stage comes the indistinct murmur of the voices of Tamal Krishna Goswami and Bhakti Charu Swami. Then clearly, who's Bhakti Charu?
It is by your mercy only that I have this opportunity to serve Srila Prabhupada.
Who's Tamal Krishna?
Tamal Krishna was Ananda Kirtan Prabhu.
Not by my mercy, but by your wonderful devotion and Srila Prabhupada's divine grace.
So,
We are in luck. Prabhupada's secretary Tamal Krishna Goswami and his servant Bhakti Charu Maharaj.
Let's join them at once.
Wait, don't intrude. When Prabhupada's servants meet, it is like the deliciously sweet blending of milk with sugar. If heated further, the thick nectar of
Rubbery.
forms. Rubbery, this is. Relishing spiritual emotions and mastery in the kitchen have this in common. You must have patience and the correct ingredients. Let's enter unnoticed. We can hear everything from the reception room.
they exit. Okay. Tamal Krishna Goswami and Bhakti Charu Swami enter. The scene is the main sitting room of Prabhupada's residence, late evening, toward the end of July.
Like a child born to elderly parents, I feel that I have missed the joy of our father's younger days. Please describe them to me.
This photo speaks for more than I ever could.
They walk from photo to photo. In Prabhupada's room there used to be photos of old Sankirtan and temples.
Oh Prabhupada, laughter is like the sun rising brilliant on the horizon. And here with his head touching the petal of the rose. How similar Prabhupada and the rose, both fragments and the soft but rich. Watch for the thorns. There are tests. After all, one must pass to qualify for this. The remembrance one morning during the walk through the Golden Gate Park in the San Francisco, Prabhupada stopped to praise the humility of the races and the kindness of the boy feeding some pigeon. He talked about the voice of the goat, the horn of an old red goat here, the mating call of the thrush there, differently pointing out nature's simple yet wise.
Lessons to us all.
Yet wise lessons to us all. Go on.
On another morning,
And on other morning walk, this time the Vinci Beach is exposed as scientists bluff with the simple common sense as easy as Krishna could crush the pride of the Kamsa in a big wrestling the different things seen now.
Prabhupada hasn't taken his morning walk for at least 6 months. Even riding in a car is too exhausting.
But this consciousness is completely unaffected through the illness, has certainly taken its toll in other ways.
Look here how briskly he moved through the airport
Lounges.
airport lounges, moved by hundreds of ecstatic devotees.
He is 3 times our age, yet none of us kept us up with him. He challenged us in so many ways and always came out victorious. He said that it was our youth that kept him from growing old.
This looks like
Sorry.
This looks like an early fire sacrifice. Isn't that Brahmananda helping Prabhupada?
New York City, probably 68, 69.
Devotees say my getting fast, second and then sannyas initiation, all within 2 months was extraordinary.
You are a demigod, Bhakti Charu. They also take birth without pregnancy. Bhakti Charu love. After a past, Tamal Krishna continues seriously. Others are apparently not so fortunate. We have got more than 200 devotees asking for initiation. I have told Prabhupada because he told Mataji that his illness is the result of the so many disciples. Prabhupada lecture in June beside Radha Rasmari, we should title this Loyal Soldiers.
Giriraj told me that Srila Prabhupada considered fighting for Radha Rasbihari his greatest victory of all.
Yes, he did, and it was a long battle, and it's still going on. Only now it has been taken a new turn.
What do you mean?
When he first installed this deity, he promised them he would build them the most magnificent temple of all, if only they would stand in this tin shed to keep everything assured while the negotiations of the land. Radha Rasbihari kept their end of their bargain, and now Srila Prabhupada is pressurizing us to complete the temple. Sometimes I think that his promise to Radha Rasbihari more than anything else keeps Prabhupada struggling to survive.
What a contrast between that simple shape and this great palace.
The statue is in France. Prabhupada surrounded by the France devotees.
He looks so noble.
Yet no more so than when sitting in a teaching, but in Mayapur of hundred together by hundreds of karmis on a 747 walking. The photo was taken while walking through the streets of Moscow.
It seems that he alone had the courage and inspiration to travel to foreign lands and humbly beg lectures and yavanas to please accept the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Standing, whenever I see this early picture of Prabhupada standing in Tompkins Square Park, I am struck by his compassion and quiet determination.
The hardship he has gone through, everyone in debt to him, although most people know nothing of him.
This is the real cause of Srila Prabhupada's illness.
Not the failure of his kidney or meager age,
but the sin of the world.
Oh, since Bhakti Charu, it is our sins that bear mostly heavily.
I feel guilty. Do you?
Guilty and in debt internally in debt.
What can we do? But when I see Prabhupada being offered a plate of prasadam, I feel even worse. He asks me to cook for him, but takes nothing more than a little juice, and that very rarely. Seeing him as he was before, healthy, vigorous, I feel hopeless.
Never say that.
Maharaj, do you think Prabhupada will ever recover?
Will the sun rise? Can you imagine that it won't? Well, in my mind, it's the same with the Prabhupada. Without the sun, this world would be finished. It's like that. I can't think of living without him. Prabhupada seems
To be.
Forgive
to
me.
be living on love alone. And if our love grows fade from the selfishness or neglect.
Forgive me. I have become somewhat feverish during these months of his ordeal. Srila Prabhupada binds me to him with his affection and then shatters my hopes by saying there is no chance he will recover. Love is a cruel prison keeper. It brings me to the point of death and then suddenly grants me a reprieve.
Who is that coming down the stairs?
Maybe it's Upendra, Bhagatji, and he were alone with Prabhupada.
Should we continue? It's after 7 o'clock. Should we? It's long.
It's long.
It's 7.
Yeah.
It's 7.
Tomorrow.
Get ready for the Arati also.
Okay. We can do a little bit every day.
It's a long drama.
Yeah, it's a long drama.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Like